There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you stop asking for their attention. You stop sending the message you rewrote 3 times. You stop waiting by your phone. You stop making yourself smaller so they could feel larger. And in that silence, something shifts. Not just in you, in them. Because here is what no one tells you about walking away. It is not just an act of self-preservation. It is, whether you intended it or not, one of the most psychologically powerful things you can do to someone who never expected you to leave. And the most surprising part? It doesn't just hurt their feelings. It breaks something much deeper. It breaks their ego. To understand why, we have to understand what the ego actually needs to survive. The ego is not arrogance. Not exactly. Psychology describes it as the part of us that constructs and protects our identity, the story we tell ourselves about who we are, how we are perceived, and where we stand in relation to others. And for certain people, particularly those who rely on control, validation, or emotional superiority, that story depends entirely on you staying in place. When you are present, when you are texting back, showing up, emotionally available, you become a mirror. And in that mirror, they see exactly who they want to see. Someone desired, someone powerful, someone whose absence would hurt you more than theirs would hurt them. You, in that dynamic, are the confirmation that they matter. But the moment you walk away, the mirror goes dark, and they are left standing in front of nothing. Psychology suggests that this is the moment the ego enters a kind of crisis. Because the ego does not just want love, it wants proof. It needs external confirmation to maintain its internal structure. And when the person who was providing that confirmation quietly exits, the ego experiences something researchers sometimes describe as a narcissistic wound, a deep, almost disorienting rupture in self-image. You weren't just a person to them, you were evidence. Think about it this way. Imagine someone who has spent years believing, consciously or unconsciously, that they are the one in every relationship who cares less, who could walk away first, who has the emotional upper hand. That belief gives them a sense of control. It is a quiet superiority they may never voice, but always feel. And then one day, you simply leave. Calmly, without rage, without begging, without the dramatic farewell they may have expected. That silence is devastating to the ego. Not because they necessarily loved you more than they admitted, but because your leaving rewrites the story they told themselves about the dynamic. And the ego cannot tolerate a story where it was wrong. Many people who have been walked away from describe a strange and unsettling feeling. Not exactly sadness, but something more like disorientation. A restlessness they cannot explain. A sudden compulsive desire to reach out, not necessarily because they want you back, but because they need to restore the narrative. They need to feel that they still have access to you, that they still hold the power to affect you. Because your indifference, your calm departure, signals something their ego finds unbearable. It signals that they were replaceable, that you are okay, that the version of themselves they sold you, the untouchable, the unavailable, the one who didn't care as much, has somehow made you care less too. The brain, when threatened, doesn't always respond with sadness. Often it responds with pursuit, with sudden interest, with the reappearance of people who had once made you feel invisible. It is not growth. It is not love. It is ego repair. Research in attachment psychology consistently finds that emotionally avoidant individuals, people who pride themselves on needing no one, often experience intense anxiety when the person they dismissed actually leaves. Because the availability of that person was never about love. It was about regulation. About having someone nearby who confirmed their worth without requiring them to be vulnerable. When you leave, you remove that regulation. And the discomfort that follows is not longing in the truest sense. It is withdrawal. It is the ego realizing it can no longer access its supply. And here is the painful and quietly beautiful truth about all of this. None of it means you weren't enough. It means you were too much. Too much of a mirror. Too much of a constant. Too much of a thing their ego had quietly grown dependent on, while pretending otherwise. Walking away doesn't just end the connection. It exposes it. It reveals what the dynamic actually was. It reveals who was really holding the weight, and it forces the other person to sit alone with the version of themselves that only appears when no one is watching. The version without an audience, without a mirror, without you there to confirm the story. That moment of confrontation is where the ego breaks. Not dramatically, not all at once, quietly, in the middle of the night, in the reaching for a phone, in the sudden softening of someone who was once unreachable. And if you are someone who has walked away, or is still gathering the strength to, understand this. Your silence is not weakness. It is not coldness. It is not giving up. It is the moment you stopped performing for someone who never acknowledged the performance. It is the moment you chose yourself so completely that their ego had nothing left to stand on. There is something profound about that choice, something that most people underestimate. Because walking away is not the absence of feeling. It is often the most feeling thing you can do, the fullest expression of knowing your own worth. And sometimes, without you ever intending it, that knowing is the most powerful message you could ever send. If this touched something in you, if it reflected a truth you have been quietly carrying, you are not alone. The patterns we live inside, the dynamics we stay in far longer than we should, they make sense. They have psychology behind them. And understanding that psychology is how we begin to move differently. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the quiet, hidden truths of human behavior. New videos every week for the ones who want to understand not just others, but themselves.